Welcome back to Politics Nation. New polling out this morning shows that despite the wave of enthusiasm for Vice President Kamala Harris, the presidential race remains a dead heat on the eve of the first presidential debate between her and former President Donald Trump. The New York Times poll shows Trump leading the vice president by a single point, well within the margin of error. And the numbers from the crucial 7 swing states reflecting just how tight the race is, with the candidates tied or Harris holding a slim lead. Joining me now is Matthew Dowd, chief strategist for the 2004 Bush-Cheney campaign and now an MSNBC senior contributor and analyst, and Laura Leder, Democratic strategist and CEO of All In Together. Matthew, let's start with the general race numbers. You've worked on campaigns. What do you think about these numbers? Is this a warning sign for the Harris campaign? They could be plateauing or even losing ground, or is this what you'd expect from a tight race in its final months?
Well, I mean, I think every signal that you get in the final 58 days of a close race is a warning sign. If campaigns are smart to take everything, not to take anything for granted, and to act, even if they're not, but act as if they're the underdog and they're a point or two behind. I would discount a bit the New York Times poll. It's a singular poll. I don't think at this point in time it's healthy to look at only one poll. I think if you look at the 8 or 9 polls, credible polls that have been done since the Democratic Convention, they show the vice president with an average 3-point lead. That's what I think this race is. She has about a 3-point lead in this. One of the reasons why the New York Times poll has Donald Trump up 1 is they have Republicans more. They have 4% more Republicans in the poll than Democrats, and no other poll has shown that. They've shown Democrats with a higher degree of enthusiasm than Republicans up until this one poll. And so take a look at the averages. I think she still has a lead. I think it's about 3 points, but also in a close race that's going to be decided by no more than 3 or 3.5 points. It's always important not to take anything for granted.
Now, Lauren, the vice president has made up considerable ground from where Biden was when he dropped out, but her current numbers are still lagging behind previous Democratic candidates at this point in the race, with women, young people, and voters of color, groups that have traditionally voted heavily Democratic. Is there a disconnect here, and if so, what is driving it?
Well, I think there's a couple things to look at. I mean, we can't forget that she's been running for president for, 5 weeks? I mean, it's just an incredibly short and compressed period of time. And so I think part of what the poll shows, and I completely agree with Matt on everything that he said, but one of the takeaways, which I think is interesting, which the Times spun as very negative, and I completely disagree with the characterization that the Times made, which is that the Times points out that 28% of voters say that they need to learn more about Harris, compared to just 9% who said the same about Trump. They pay that as a negative. I actually think it's a huge opportunity for Harris because she is new to the race. She has an opportunity to continue to define herself, to win over more voters. She's campaigning aggressively in the battleground states and around the country, whereas really, I think most voters have a pretty set view of Donald Trump. I don't think there's much that he can do on Tuesday to change Americans' minds about who he is, whereas Harris has actually room to grow on that front. She does have to secure the votes of young people. She is leading among all of the groups that you just put up, even though those margins aren't quite as big. But again, we're still in the beginning days for her. She has time. Voters will start voting soon, so that time window is narrow. It's part of what makes the stakes really high for her on Tuesday. But I think there's signs of strength, and I completely agree with Matt that this one poll probably should not be overblown.
Now, Matthew, let's look ahead to the debate. Trump advisors are reportedly concerned he could hurt himself by veering off talking points and engaging in personal attacks against Vice President Harris. This weekend, the former president doesn't seem to be a very unifying person when it comes to his mood. Just last night, he was posting on Truth Social about prosecuting his political opponents and sentencing them to prison. What version of Trump are you expecting to see on Tuesday?
The same. I mean, he hasn't changed since he came down the escalator in 2015. He's going to be who he is, which is why opinions of him are pretty locked in. And I agree with what was just said. There's not a lot of things he can do to change that. And so if he sort of does his sort of typical chaos and cruelty and all coarseness and all the things that he is who he is, and he's going to be who he is in the course of this, I don't think it necessarily his strategists aren't worried about it hurting him. I think they're worried about it highlights a different personality in the vice president. And so every time he does that, I don't think it's going to diminish his numbers, because his numbers are pretty set. He's going to get the 44, 45, 46, maybe 47% of the vote. That's where he's locked in at. I think what it can do is when the highlight goes to her, she can highlight the differences that her personality and her tone and her vision is from him. And so if he does that, it's only going to help her highlight the best and the best and the best and the most positive things about herself.
Lauren, the Harris campaign has reportedly been looking for ways to get under Trump's skin in the debate. And the vice president has to deliver her own message at the same time. The latest New York Times poll shows nearly 30% of voters say they need to learn more about her, which you referred to. 63% of those voters aren't sure what her policy plans are for the future. How can Vice President Harris address these questions while responding forcefully to attacks and insults that are going to come from her from the other podium?
Listen, there's no question that it is going to be an incredible challenge for her. I think that's part of why she's taking this incredibly seriously and preparing all weekend in a very serious way. And it's complicated for her for a lot of reasons. First of all, she is the first woman of color to lead a presidential ticket in American history, and she is running against somebody with a long history of sexist and racist attacks. How to respond to that is a absolute tightrope for her, as it was for Hillary Clinton in 2016, who later said that she regretted that she didn't push back against Trump when he was sort of lurking over her and bullying her during the debates. She has to do that. She has to hit back at him hard, because that's part of how she shows her strength and ownership of the moment. At the same time, she can't go too far, because that's part of the challenge and the double standard that women often face when they are running as principals. And then last, yes, she has to talk about her policies, even though there's been a double standard in the media about the sort of, word salad of nonsense that we hear constantly from President Trump. And yet the narrative has been on many media platforms that she's the one who has to prove more about what her policies are. So it's and by the way, he's going to lie nonstop throughout the debate, as he has done in every debate that he's ever participated in. And it will be a real challenge for her to think about where to push back on him, where to call out his lies. If he again repeats the same lies about abortion, saying that Democrats support abortion after birth, I mean, these like wild, crazy things that Biden did not push back on in the last debate. So it's a nightmare for her. But if anyone is up to the task, it is her. She is a prosecutor. She's extremely poised, and I think will handle it. But, we have to recognize the stakes are high for her. They're pretty low for him. He basically just has to clear a basic bar of competence, which so far, has been lowered for him again and again. So it's going to be a tough night and a lot to watch.
I'm out of time, but let me ask both of you. A lot has been said in the media about the muting of the mics, whether it should be muted, whether it should not be muted. Matthew, then you, Lauren. What is in your opinion, what will the impact of the question of muting the mics have to do with this debate one way or another in terms of persuading viewers?
I think it's going to have little to no impact. I mean, I think she's going to be prepared to do it. She knows what she's doing. She's strong in this. I think they would prefer it because it's an unfiltered Donald Trump, but I don't think it's going to have much impact on the debate results.
Lauren?
Yeah, I agree. I just think whatever whatever the answer is, there's going to be Monday morning or Wednesday morning quarterbacking about a different scenario that could have made it better. There's going to be chaos. There always is in debates like this, especially debating somebody who has a lot of difficulty with the truth. So there's no right answer. I think both sides are going to do the best with what they've finally agreed on.
Chaos and Donald Trump. And you act like those are two different words. Matthew Dowd and Lauren Leder, thank you both for being with us. More Politics Nation after the break.